Welcome to Redpill Diaries. I want to talk about today that even the quisling serfs are starting to wake up, right? Because what we have going on in America is, and sorry for all the noise around here, there's people drilling and shit. Basically, we're at a stage now where people have realized that what they were doing is slaving away to get things that you should have by default, like a house, like a garden, like all these little things. And in let's say you have 24 hours a day, right? 8 hours a day for some people, for the lucky ones, is work. Well, not lucky, but slightly luckier than the people that work 12 hours or 2 jobs or 3 jobs, right? So you're giving 2/3 this time to your employer. You're slaving away for the corporate class. Meanwhile, I've always been on this series telling you how I'm against capitalism, communism, and socialism, and fascism. Anything with authoritarianism, so feudalism. And I've mentioned them many times, and I'll mention them many times more. So, I've got the camera set up here so it doesn't fall over. Right, so basically, what's happening in America is the startings, the beginnings of some new brand of American communism, it looks like. You've got Paul Krugman going on about how he's happy with the state of affairs of money printing for these corporations while giving a tiny bit of money printing to the people. So it's almost like they'll meet you halfway. Okay, you can unenslave yourselves, but we're going to meet you halfway. We don't want you to be totally unslaved, so we're just gonna limit what you can actually get out of the world. Remember, it's all a wealth transfer. That's why we've got 8 billion people, or almost 8 billion people now, because it was too difficult to get the money out of the hands of the people when you only had 1.75 billion. Because people just say, you know what, fuck this, I'm checking out of the world, I'm just going to go up to the mountains, make a little hut, and be a homesteader. But then the more and more it became, oh, my son's moving to the city to get a job. Look what happened in Japan. You got 20 million people down from what they used to have, right? And hence, you can move so many areas in France, in Japan, and you can actually get really cheap rent, and everyone still has it in their head that Japan's an expensive country, and it's not, unless you're in Shinjuku or something, you know? So this happened all over the world. People are away from their families, that's breaking up the community, again causing chaos. Not to say that people should stay where they are. I've got nothing against travel. It does upset me though that I have to jump on a plane that potentially burns fuel. I don't know about that one as well. As you see, back in Chicago I did a little episode on how the airplanes has apparently, that particular model of 777 that I was filming at the time apparently has 20 rhinoceroses or 20 hippopotamuses full of fuel on the wings. How the fuck can that fit in the wings? And the answer is that it can't. We're being lied to about fuel consumption on these intercontinental planes and everything, right? But besides that, we're being lied to about the technology that's around, because we know that technology is always beyond what we're given as mere quislings who paid for the technology to be created in the first place, right? But it really does look like they're trying to rebrand communism, and I still think there's a chance out there that all of our governments are in cahoots. But even if they're not, it could just be that they recognize that the paradigm of kleptocracy that crony capitalism delivered, that is basically stealing the money off everybody and then pretending that people like Jeff Bezos are just hard workers who deserve all that money, right? And again, the money's meaningless. It's what it has the power to buy. It's the time of others that it has the power to enslave, like the people in the warehouses. The other thing I want to speak about was the obviousness of, as I've been speaking about for at least 5 years now, is probably longer, because I work in automations, right? Well, I used to work in automations. I stopped working in 2016, or the end of 2016. So I suppose I do a little bit of contracting work here and there, so you could still see I do work a little bit, but I do an hour here, 3 hours there. Sometimes, some months I don't do anything. And that was to get freedom. That was because I worked out a long time ago that the 9 to 5 is not the right way to be living, right? But what I did say back then was that it's quite obvious where this all leads to. The automation leads to an unsustainability of capitalism. But if you still have capitalism in place when you have everything fully automated, that leads to a system of effectively, if it's still globalism, it will be global fascism. And then you will see laws being in place to make your mere existence illegal. As I've said in previous videos, the example is, "Oh, Daddy, look at that poor man down there. Please, let's help him. Come on, Daddy." "Ah, okay then. Here's a few shekels." And then the little girl gives the bum money. Give it one generation later, and it's like, "Oh, Daddy, look at that look at that cockroach filthying up our stairwell. Giles, exterminate this man." You know, it doesn't take that long to change the culture of what's acceptable. And that is where we're going to be heading, and that is how they get rid of all the people and make the planet look very nice again for the people who built their bog holes in places like New Zealand, right? So, yeah, that's what I would say is probably going on, most likely. As I say, anything Paul Krugman likes, you've got to start questioning. And as I say, they've got nothing against communism, even though they keep on talking, he's commies in America. Just like in England, they've got nothing against breaking the law. As long as it's them doing it, you know what I mean? Like look at Ghislaine Maxwell and the Prince on the run right now. That's just a prime example of the fact that there are two sets of rules in the UK, and there's one for you, and yeah, everything in the law is designed to extract your money and your freedom, and to give maximum negative energy. Yeah. I think what needs to happen, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is we need to not accept their systems. For example, when everyone doesn't pay their rent right now, and everyone around the world, this needs to become a concerted effort from everybody who is in the rentier class, right? You need to stop paying your rent. But if everyone doesn't do it, then the traitors that because that's what you are if you don't basically not fall in line, if you don't get behind your fellow man. I know that sounds like the same thing, but it's not. Falling in line is just accepting what's given to you, right? Getting behind people is making a choice to say, I'm not going to stand for this shit. I understand that power is in numbers, because 1-to-1, the elite outpower you, you know. But all of us saying, you know what, these deeds that you have that tell me the bank owns my house until I pay it all off, even though the banks have been stealing from us, even though if you're on a 30-year mortgage, you probably paid for your house 3 times. Despite that, you know, sorry, with that in place, those systems in place, just to benefit their class, the only way out of it is to rip their paperwork up, like fucking Nancy Pelosi did ridiculously on stage, for some reason being past Donald Trump's speech. Why should she be past it? She's a Democrat sitting behind the Republican president, pulling up paper. It's all theatrics. They're all theatrical. Even Trump. And you know, we live in a duality where everything seems possible in both respects. For example, it seems to some people, for some reason, that there is credibility on the Democrat side in America, and there's not. And then it seems to others there's credibility on the Republican side, and there's not. Both sides are fucked, right? And both sides don't serve the people at all. And the human race is actually being hindered by allowing this continual flow of authoritarian oppressors and kleptocrats that have been above us. The church, the emperor, the government, the corporations, the corporate cabal. All these things are things that hold mankind back. The future isn't actually that bleak as long as we can get rid of these fuckers, right? Because we could quite easily be, and so I got dust flying around here and I'm thinking, or it could be coronavirus. The future could be actually quite good if you actually imagine, if you need to dig yourself out of quisling thinking, right? So basically, a quisling's going to think like, but work. You need to work. And then we've also we've been trained to think like this. Oh, you know, he's just not a hard worker. That kid, and so-and-so's son. Yeah, he just lazy ass. You know, maybe the reason some of these people are lazy asses is because they can see that this whole thing is fucking bullshit. Maybe they can see that no matter how much they slave, they're not going to have as much as the boomer generation had by doing half their fucking effort, right? Maybe that's what it is. And I'd say actually that's almost definitely what it is. So The only way to get around this is realize how wealthy we'd be without the parasite class there. This has always been the case. For example, a lot of the Republican Americans they're dead against having socialism, but they don't mind their taxes going to Raytheon and Lockheed, but they don't want it to go to the people who paid the taxes. I mean, we know that Google don't pay their taxes, so where did the taxes come from to pay Google these tax breaks that they get in the first place? Or to pay Amazon to fund their workers because they don't pay them enough. That all came from the people, not from Amazon, because Amazon don't pay the taxes. Starbucks don't pay the taxes. So when you understand that dynamic, you understand that they're the thieves, they're the socialists, and all you are is trying to get ahead. So if your money would go back to you, it'd be an all right thing. Me, again, I can't stand socialism, and I argue with my own family about this, well, a few of them. I just think having the freedom to do what you need to do. I don't think you need regulation, but as long as you don't have people who have control of things. Like me, if I'm living in Slovenia here and I've got control of something that's happening over in Siberia, well, it's a long way away from me. When I get told, hey, look, there's a new extraction method, but it takes a nuclear explosion, but it'll destroy the earth, but hey, we will make an extra 1 cent on the dollar profit margin. A fucking asshole will make that move and he'll make that decision. This is why the world's getting fucked right now. And this is where if you actually had localism, basically anarchy, you would end up having a situation where local people will be stewards of the land and you wouldn't be destroying it, and there'd be enough wealth for everyone. And there'd also be a balanced situation that would cancel out the effects of socialism, which is you're not going to be having 50 children sitting on your ass smoking bongs all day, right? If you actually have to do something, not necessarily work, just contribute. Hundreds of years ago, even the time of the Bible, right? People didn't have jobs; they had crafts, right? He went into a dude's house, so it meant he wasn't slaving away all day. But he might come out and make some amazing piece of furniture, and we can see the work they did back then. We can see the pyramids. We can see these fantastic artifacts, things that we don't even have the ability to produce today, glassware and all sorts of stuff. And so, where do we go wrong? I'd like to get back that world and apply modern technology to that world and see where we can get in a few years. We're already seeing that if it's not some kind of government plan, Elon Musk isn't some kind of deep state stooge, we can already see that capitalism can result in things being produced. Again, I don't think it's the capitalist element, I think it's the freedom. He got money from crony capitalism, which allows the billionaire scenario to happen, because it would not be possible otherwise. And then from that, basically what I'm saying there is globalism opened the doors for a different level of wealth, but controls weren't put in place. Either controls or full freedom wasn't put in place. So there's two paths. You can take the control path, and you need to make everything under full control, and that cannot be done by human beings because we can't be trusted. We're too open to corruption, right? So what you end up needing is this is where AI and blockchain come in. So there's two sides to everything. You can set something and say, right, I made this robot, go kill someone, or you can make a robot and say, go farm this field. So it depends how you apply something. So we can apply robotics and we can apply AI to make life better for us. For example, a computer which decides if something's fair, and then a computer watching that one to decide if it's taking the right decision, because it's like you can appeal the decision. Let's say you can appeal it 3 or 4 layers, because for the sake of it, it's going to be fast, it's going to be computing things very fast anyway. We can get rid of judges, we can get rid of lawyers, and that means if you're guilty, you've actually done something wrong. That's if you maintain a control system. If you don't go the method of control, it just becomes, well, let's just produce stuff, let's all have good lives. You'll probably find that most people who are psychopaths and crazy people, if there wasn't a cycle of impoverishment, you probably wouldn't have as much generational pedophilia, generational abuse, and all these other things happening. They're actually a consequence of, one, the previous generation having it hard and also getting fucked up in the head, and also passing on their neuroses and everything from their parents, right? This takes a few generations to get out. This is why a lot of countries have become more and more scummy, like Scotland, for example. It's been oppressed by England for 317 years, and you're getting more and more scum as there's getting more and more impoverishment, because you can't, and less freedom, because their system has always got its foot on your neck, saying you can't do this. The king owns this, the queen owns that, whatever the fuck, right? So basically, I'd prefer to see the path where we don't have any controls in place. Like someone fucks with our family, what are you going to do then, Craig? Well, I'm going to be free to blow his fucking head off. That's what I'm going to be free to do. Oh, but what if he comes back? Then that's how it will balance out. And eventually what will happen is he'll get his beans and he'll be overpowered because it can't go on forever. But what happens right now is if you fight against evil, you go to jail for it. And they get away with it. So the system's actually helping it grow. In a level playing field, evil usually loses, right? In a world where you actually have everyone having technology, everyone having what they need, there's not very much reason to steal. People will still do it, but then when you have rampant prosperity, well, that person's not just a poor, as they call here, kemet, which is a peasant. They're actually someone who's got resources, right? So, and they can band together with their neighbors in the community and kick the fuck out of someone by way of, I don't know, annihilating their fucking home. Like, you want to play that fucking game, we're going to completely destroy you. That's what we come to. Taking power back in your own hands instead of having a nanny state. Fucking hate nanny state, everything about it. Whether it's serving, anytime someone wants to feed you, anytime you have to help someone in life, what you'll find is most people who I've given financial help to, who've asked for it, have ended up being motherfuckers afterwards, right? And that's because they don't have any respect. The simple fact is they end up having a feeling of inadequacy in themselves, and then that manifests itself as some vendetta against you for helping them out, right? I've seen it again, time and time again. So there's something to be said for doing things yourself. The other thing is it balances out the socialism flaw. If you're given something for nothing, there's a certain type of person who will sit back in their ass and do nothing, taking the money and breed like a bunny rabbit. And what you're doing is reverse eugenics, which is called dysgenics. Bravo. And the problem with that is obvious. You end up being surrounded by fucking minging ugly people with fucking mutated people, and mutated mentally and physically. And I don't give a fuck what your opinion is on this one. It's just fact, right? Look at all the animals. When you go through and see a whole bunch of majestic penguins or polar bears, you don't have one that's sitting there like, oh, and another one that's they'll just end up dying out. And this is what's fucking us up. And the thing is to set us apart from the animals. Look after the infirm. Look after people who have got genetic issues. I'm not saying take the Hitler stance, but what I am saying is don't come along and say, oh, you're blind from birth, you're blind from birth. Oh yeah, on you go, and you require constant help, both of you. And if you had a child, your child's going to be blind. Yeah, go ahead. This PC culture that what they're doing a few years ago, advertising on 60 Minutes in Australia, it's fucking disgusting. It's bullshit. That is the sick thing. You're not sick for thinking it's wrong. You're sick for thinking that's a good thing, to produce a child that's definitely going to be blind from birth. Some of the stories I've seen are like that, or that exactly, and stories that are similar. So the only thing that keeps that in check is saying, yeah, you have a world where there's no need, there's no want, there's no suffering, there's no hunger, because you can always press a button and get some kind of help. You know what I mean? Because of technology. But at the same time, it should be a world of logic. Yeah, I really want to have kids. Oh, you know what? Even though you're blind and deaf and whatever it might be, there's still going to be foster children. There's still going to be children to be adopted because the parents died. You know what I mean? You don't have to pass on your seed. And that's the thing. What's happening in the world today is people who actually have good genes, like good brains, good bodies to pass on, are not doing it because they feel trapped by the government that's putting systems in place to fuck them all the time. And they're smart enough to realize that they don't want to be put in a trap, and that's why they don't end up having kids sometimes. Especially in some countries like New Zealand, very highly controlled countries where there is actually no freedom. It's only an illusion of freedom, like America. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I know a lot of people are going to hate this because of what the topics that I've spoken about. When I say a lot of people, my audience of 5, but so I'll probably have an audience of 4 or 3 now. But I don't care. This is all about telling the truth and being open, saying things that are just logical and make sense, rather than things that make people be able to virtue signal and say, oh look what a nice person I am. Because actually, you don't have to be cruel to be kind, but if you actually just do things in a sensible, logical way, you don't have to be cruel. Example I gave my flatmates years ago, these two Canadian girls moved in with me in Australia years ago. They were thick as fuck. And they ended up saying to me about, we were talking about aid in Africa. And I said, well, a good friend of mine in New Zealand, and this was Dean, this is still one of the most intelligent things ever, was if you're going to give aid to countries, because those countries, if they end up overpopulating due to your aid, they will be the potential enemies of your children someday, or at least they'll be competing for resource with your children, or competing for jobs, or even just competing for land that they don't even need to have. They're just going to invade because they're more powerful. And that's the reality of when you feed your enemy. Help your enemy, don't do everything for them, right? So what he was saying is, if they have aid, lace it with contraceptive. Once they get to the stage of look after themselves, then they can stop taking your contraceptive laced aid. They're not going to starve, so you've been humane, but you haven't allowed them to exacerbate the problem while living in your pocket. Simple. If you think I'm crazy for saying that, or thinking Dean's idea is a good idea, then yeah, please explain why. Don't just say why. Oh, that's right. I can't believe what I've heard, or I'm shocked. Tell me why you're shocked. Tell me what it is that, because then you can probably start to actually work out what's wrong in your mind. Why you can't see logic, why you're averse to logic. So basically these two Canadian girls, one who used to speak to her mum on the phone for like 4 hours a day, and I used to sit there and think, you just sat with your lazy ass in the apartment all day. The most she would venture out is to go, we had like a communal pool area with a jacuzzi and shit, and she would go out there, maybe have a glass of wine and back in again. And she'd speak to her mum, and she'd be cooking and talking and making more food and nibbly food and eaty things. She used to talk about food all the time. It drive me nuts. I'd be trying to watch a movie, you know. So and I thought to myself, what the fuck can she speak about her mum for 3 to 4 hours a day when she has no life? I mean, I was out at parties all the time and DJing and shit and just shagging chicks. What the fuck has she got to talk about? I mean, not you're going to talk about it to your parents, but I'm just saying, what could she talk about? So, but yeah, I told them this thing about, I said, you know, this is the thing, unless you can install this idea like my friend had, what you'd actually have to do is stop giving aid to third world countries, because what you're doing is, we can see this, by the way, mathematically throughout the years by the statistics. When you feed people who are starving to death because the land they live on, or the way they're managing or mismanaging the land they live on, cannot sustain the amount of people they have, or their education, in the case of where my kind of second uncle got thrown off his land in Zimbabwe years ago, offered to teach the people how to farm and use his farm as a school. Mugabe said no. He built his house himself, and he made the land arable where it had just been dust and shit before. Now it's dust. The family who got given it are living way down the road in some shack. The house is just basically, you got fires in the floor. All the floorboards are gone, but it was fires inside and everything. I don't really blame the people. I blame the opportunity for not being there to train them when he actually made the offer. But this is happening right now in South Africa. So starvation is going to start becoming an issue in South Africa, right? The same cycle's happening again because of egotism and because of tribalism can be a good thing, but the bad aspects of tribalism, right? In other words, white man bad, even though they've lived there for hundreds of years. So when I said this to her, that you're better off not helping them, because what you're doing is, instead of 2 starving children, you end up in 10 years time with 50 starving children because of 2 people that you didn't allow to die, because you couldn't handle not turning a blind eye, but just saying, look, that is what it is. They've made their own bed, or they've had the luck that they've had. If you don't have the strength to turn away and not help, or if you don't have the strength to help fully, in other words, take them under your wing, show them stuff, teach them properly, do the full cycle, and then put them back again and say, right, you've got to look after yourselves now. If you fail, you're on your own, right? Because we've given you everything you need. We've given you the knowledge, we've given you some resources, like tools or whatever it might be. But in the other respect, if you just keep on giving aid, you're doing what the socialists love. You're creating people that need the tit. Here you go, suck on the tit of motherfucking country, and that is why patriotism and socialism are fucking up the world, right? So anyway, I was the monster. These chicks were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what you're saying." They're basically almost in tears, and I said, "I can't believe what you're saying. You're so sick. You would rather turn 2 people into 50 than 100 than 1,000 starving people. Oh my God, like you eclipse Hitler." And how disgusting you are. And they're like, "I can't believe you're saying that." And they're just, right now I'm like outraged. This is back in 2004, so we were still midway into the age of stupid. I'm gonna leave it there. Hey, plant food. Be in a place that there's not too much government. Be in a place there's not too much regulation, and cities aren't natural. Just yeah. I'll leave it there. It's been Redpill Diaries. I've been Craig, giving you. Bye.